it's Maureen with Sanditon Chronicles. Today is episode 2 of our podcast, and I'm so excited. Be prepared to hear that word a lot. I am so excited to announce that today is interview day, and I'm even more excited to tell you that our very first interview was with Rob Jarvis. He played Old Stringer in Sanditon, and he was in episode 2, I believe, all the way until the end. And I have to tell you, it was just such an amazing experience to be able to interview him and chat with him. He had so many good insights into his character and into how the world just sort of supported itself and how it worked back then. And it was really interesting to talk with him about that stuff. And it was so fun to be able to speak with him. He was a fun guy. He was really awesome. And just, I cannot say this enough. He was just such a delightful person to speak with. I was actually sad by the end that I didn't have more questions to continue talking to him, to have a reason to draw it out a little bit longer. I'm very excited for you guys to see this. I'm very excited for you guys to hear what he has to say. I'm very excited for you guys to be on this journey with us. And I'm very excited that you are going to get something awesome out of this interview. You're going to get some insight that you didn't have before, and you're going to see things just a little bit differently than you might have before. So enjoy the interview, and we will talk to you very soon. Good morning.
Hey.
Or good afternoon to you, really.
Hey, Maureen, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Yes, not so bad. Well, I tell you, I had my COVID jab yesterday.
Oh, how was that?
Well, it was pretty rough last night, actually.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I had the AstraZeneca one, and I'm suffering a little bit today from it. But anyway, there it is. But apart from that, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for coming on anyway.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So I am a little obsessed with Sanditon.
Right.
As a lot of the world is, I think. So I kind of wanted to just run through some questions I had for you about Sanditon, and I wanted to ask you what you're up to now, and
sure, yeah,
kind of go from there. I'm really terrible at small talk.
Listen, don't worry, so am I.
I have to fight my tendency to get really deep into a conversation when I first meet somebody. So
that's fine. That's the way I like it.
Okay. So you played Old Stringer in Sanditon.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, I always thought this was an interesting character, Old Stringer, because there was a marked delineation, I think, between the classes, which was important. I think very important at the time, because it predates the labour movement, certainly in this country. And it was the character I thought was interesting because it highlighted the conditions that people were working under at the time, and people's dependence on employers when they had no right of reply, really. So yeah, that's sort of socio-politically was interesting, from that point of view. And he's very set in his ways, I think, Old Stringer.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that his son sees a life beyond what he's got is something that he can't really understand. But it's also a cause of concern to him, because he's worried that his son's going to be manipulated and hurt emotionally by the path that he's going down, that he can see him going down. So yeah, that was what I thought was interesting about the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, I that was actually one of the questions I had later on. It's about his reaction to James Stringer, because you can see those moments when he's really proud, like at the regatta, when he was really proud that he was winning, but then when he wants to advance in other places, Old Stringer just kind of seemed to get almost offended by it.
Well, I mean, he in some ways I think he sees it. It's a double-edged sword, I think, because on one hand he can see it as a rejection of his class that he finds very important. So that is, he probably is a little bit offended by that, perhaps. But I think the overriding thing, I mean, I think he absolutely adores his son. and I think he can see it, the talent his son's got, but he's worried that he'll be one thing he's worried about is that he'll be a laughing stock. I think
Okay.
somebody trying to step out of their class, that he would be perhaps moving within the circles that were beyond his class, and on that basis alone, he'd be a laughing stock. I think that worries him,
Yeah.
But also that he's fit for abuse, I think. I mean, there was a scene that was cut actually, which was a lovely scene. It's just after the scene where he's showing Charlotte his drawings in the house, in the Stringer house, and there was a scene where they have a little bit of an argument where his son criticizes him for his treatment of Charlotte in the previous scene. And it becomes apparent in that scene that his concern for his son.
Okay.
And that didn't make it into the show, which sort of highlights a little bit more about what I'm thinking, But yeah, it all comes from the right place from Old Stringer. I think it would be easy to paint him as a misery, and I hope it didn't come across like that, because I think there was more there. It's more concern. It comes from a place of love and concern.
Yeah.
Really,
even when he would fight with young Stringer, with James, it seemed like when he would get angry at James, like at the final ball scene when he was talking to him in the room, it almost seemed like old Stringer was protecting himself. He wasn't like being mean. He was just kind of preparing himself for his son to leave.
Yes, well, again, which is because that would leave him on his own, because his wife had died, So,
do you have any backstory on the wife? Because I was curious about that.
Somebody asked me. The only backstory I had on it was that she was very tall and extremely good looking.
Well, good for old Stringer, right?
Well, I was going to say it's the only way that they could have had a son like that.
That's true. There is a bit of a size difference there, just a little bit.
Just a bit.
So, what did you have to do to get into your character?
The costume's really good, isn't it? The costume helps, things like that. I
kind of want one of those handkerchiefs that you guys wear.
Oh yeah, that was good, wasn't it? Yeah, the costume people were fantastic, and makeup as well. I had strange little wig bits going on, which were good fun. But the costume and makeup always helps with the character. But I think as well, coming from that I mean, I'm a father myself, so thinking about your care for your child, because that was what the character was there for. I think to delineate the class difference and to show that sort of how that level of sort of paternal care can be misinterpreted, perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. How much of the character is similar to you? Now I know you said you're a father, so did you put a lot of yourself into Old Stringer when you were playing that role?
Yeah, I mean, probably. It's I can look at my son. My son's 17 now, so and the last thing I'd want him to do would be to go down a potentially dangerous or harmful route, because he's at that point in his life now where he'll be starting to think about what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And your job as a parent is to protect your child, isn't it? But there comes a point where they have to go in their own direction, and all you can do is offer advice, And I mean, we shot this 2 years ago now, so he would have been a bit younger then. But you can imagine. And also, I mean, politically, I'm very sort of left leaning, and it was important to me the sort of the unrepresented class struggle that was happening at the time. I mean, it was well documented in the show, the fact that there weren't enough workers to do the job, and then that means that people who were working were having to do more, which led to my accident in it. I mean, it was a direct result of the fact that the workers weren't being looked after in the right way. So I found that interesting.
And I think that your character really played that out well. There was one scene where James had come in the house and he was complaining about Tom Parker. And your character had said something along the lines of, you don't say that to the man who pays you. But there was another scene when it was the first time you had kind of had a stumble while you were going up the ladder with all your bricks.
Yes.
And you were upset. And so it was like most of the time you were trying to maintain that you didn't offend your employer, but the working conditions were so terrible that in those moments you couldn't help but have an outburst about how it's just unfair and how wrong it is that you guys are having to double up like this.
Well, you're in that terrible situation where you can't afford to be fired. You can't afford really to air your grievances in case you do get fired. And as I say, it predates the union movement, and you had no recourse, So he had to do what he was told, really, but as much as it upset him,
Especially that, because I didn't realize at first that the workers weren't being paid, but then in that cricket scene when the big explosion comes out and they say we haven't been paid in weeks. So not only was old Stringer, was he doubling up on duties he probably shouldn't have been doing at his age and his state of health, but he also was getting nothing for it. That's astounding to me.
Yeah, but also there's in that scene you talk about where they're dropping the bricks, there's a slight issue for old Stringer, I think, because his son is his boss in that scene.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that adds another little layer of sort of.
Because that is the one time that he gives James Stringer verbally gives him the almost approval to keep going as he's going, when he says, it's not your job either. You're a foreman. You shouldn't be doing this stuff. Where in other scenes, it's almost like he's trying to discourage him from that. So you can see that battle that's going on in old Stringer's head a little bit.
Yeah, good.
So were you surprised by his death, or did you feel it was necessary?
Because
you don't want to say his death ruined everything, but it kind of did.
It ruined my career. No, it didn't. Was I surprised by it? No, probably not, actually. No. I think I don't particularly see what he could have brought to the series moving forward either, old Stringer. Because you can't just have someone moaning the whole time. It's just boring, isn't it?
Yeah. And James would have gone off if he hadn't died, so it would just still be.
Yeah, I think he probably fulfilled his role, in terms of the story, Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, what was your favorite thing about old Stringer? What endeared him to you?
I liked his grumpiness, actually. I quite enjoyed that. It's fun to play.
Yeah.
I liked that about him, but I liked his pride. That's a great mug, by the way.
Thank you. It's not quite big enough.
That's a cracking size. That.
I have one that's about the size of my head that I almost pulled out, but it's affiliated with another show, so I didn't want to bring it
don't
out.
worry about that.
And I do. That's a good point to bring up, because in that final scene, that's kind of I don't exactly go in that question later on, but when in that final scene of him right before he has the heart attack, he's painting. So he's not even really doing the stonemasonry, but he's making his work, even on the outside, meticulously beautiful. And his insistence on staying there isn't just because he wants to prove something. It's because he's very prideful about what he's done. He's
absolutely
proud of what he's done.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's what he can see is that he's passed that on to his son, which is a moment of a certain pride for him that his son has carried it on. But he can see that his son's taken it in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
That he will. But having said that, I think his pride in his work, when I first read the script, it actually wasn't painting in that scene. It was finishing off a bit of stonework.
Oh.
But it was that attention to detail that that was important to him, and the fact that it was a real art and a talent, and something that not everybody would be able to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone else had gone home. I mean, he was the only one there, and he had probably been there, judging by labor conditions, he had probably been there since the crack of dawn.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I thought that was really telling about his character. And you pointed it out, and I didn't really think about it before, but James Stringer's an awful lot like his dad. except for, James is a little more jovial, but
Yeah, yeah. But that's that sense of pride in your work, and yeah, definitely, yeah.
yeah. So why do you think he was so against Strive Even Better? Do you think it was solely that he was worried that James would be hurt or be cut down, or do you think it was because he couldn't get there, or he really just thought you needed to stay in your lane?
I mean, I think it's a combination of all those things,
Yeah.
really. I think, I think he does see a slight betrayal of your class. I think that's quite important to him. But I think the most important thing to him would be the fact that his son would struggle outside of his class, and despite the quality of his work, he feels that James Stringer would be abused, I think.
Yeah. Because even though he would be a good architect, he would still be someone from the lower class and someone to just toss aside when you no longer needed him.
And that would never be forgotten. That I think,
Mhm.
that would, and he's aware of that. He's very aware of that. He's aware of that youthful sort of passion, and and you desire to get on in life. But he's got the experience to say it's unlikely that it will happen.
Yeah. Do you think that's at the root of his anger towards Charlotte's encouragement?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I
So
mean, I think he quite likes Charlotte. I mean, I
see, I
think
was going to ask a question in the other direction.
yeah, I think he quite loves. I think he likes the idea of her. I think that a woman coming into the house is lovely for him. And I think that there is a moment of that, and also, she looked after him when he had his accident, but I think her encouragement of his son, and he understands that his son may be doing something out of some sort of, because he's attracted to Charlotte, and she's a lovely girl, and he can see his son being blinded by how attractive she is, and that's another route where you can make a fool of yourself. I
Yeah, because
think.
she was technically out of his league.
Yeah, although she's not quite as to the on
Yeah.
the same level as the rest of them, but
Yeah, for sure.
still and she is
She's a gentleman's
mixing in that.
daughter.
She is mixing in that circle with them as well. She's part of that
Yeah.
crowd. Yeah.
So there was a scene in episode 7 when Charlotte tells James, it's when Stringer's being carried out, old Stringer's being carried out on the cart. Work, I think
Yeah.
they're going in between work. But Charlotte tells James she hopes for a more substantial conversation. And Fred repeats old Stringer. He's like, did you hear that, old Stringer? But old Stringer looks very upset by it. He actually looked almost irritated that Charlotte wanted a deeper conversation. Is that because, although he may have liked Charlotte, is that because he didn't want James to continue down that route at all?
Absolutely.
Because of her encouragement.
Of course. I mean, he doesn't want his son falling in love with this woman and then making a fool of himself and ruining his life. I think that's what he sees from that. And the fact that, I think it's Fred, isn't it, who says to him, "Did you hear that, old Stringer?" Yep. I think the fact that he's feeling probably quite isolated at that moment, old Stringer, but because it's this youthful passion that's going on, he can see from his experience point of view, he can see that that's a road that will probably end in tears.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was playing.
I like that version better because in my head I thought it was he didn't like Charlotte at all.
No.
I prefer that.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. No, I didn't. I think he was just again. It's all about concern for his son.
Protecting him.
Yeah.
So if old Stringer hadn't been so stubborn and stayed, he would have lived at least a bit longer. And if him adhering to the boat race was any indication, he wanted James to come out on top.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love that scene where the excitement is radiating off of you for Stringer. And it just gets me really amped up when I'm watching that scene play out at the regatta. But you can see on top of that, compiled with how much care he took into the finishing work of his product. We didn't see a lot of you doing the work, but we could see you pick up other men's work as well as your own. So how much of him discouraging James was him? Do you think he feared his own failure a little bit? that he I don't know how to word that exactly, but how much was you just wanting Stringer to stay, and how much was you not only fearing James's failure, but how you couldn't get there? Like you stayed in your class, you didn't advance up. Your dad stayed in that class,
Yeah.
you stayed in that class. How much was it just that you couldn't get to that level? I know that we had talked about this a little bit, but how much of it was you couldn't get up to that level, and how much it was part of you wanting him to stay with you? Because you had mentioned before that you would be alone if James left. There was no one for you.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think his concern about his own career, old Stringer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes from a point of if I just need to keep working, and I think that his concern about losing his leg early on comes from a place of, if I haven't got my leg, I can't work, and if I can't work, I can't put food on the table. I think that's his concern. I don't think he necessarily worries about a career failure sort of thing. It would only be his ability to continue to work.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what certainly what drives him. What was the second bit about his son that you were saying?
How much of old Stringer discouraging him to work because he feared, James getting hurt? How much of him discouraging him was wanting James to stay with him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's a huge thought in his mind. Only in as much as he's aware that his son's of a certain age now, and is likely to want to plough his own furrow, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he always envisaged him staying in the town, maybe buying a little house round the corner, or renting a little house round the corner, and it would all be as it had been for generations for him. His dad would have lived round the corner, and so to break that sort of cycle would worry him, I think. Yeah.
Do you think he would eventually come around and have been proud if James had actually left? I picture old Stringer like cutting out newspaper clippings of the new guy. Do you think he eventually would have come around to that point to be really proud of what he did?
I'm convinced he would. Yeah. I'm convinced he would. It all again comes from a place of don't lead yourself down a path where you may end up in big trouble here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think had his son gone the way he wanted to and been a success, I think that he'd have been hugely proud of him. Yeah.
I can you see him cutting out those little newspaper clippings?
Absolutely. I think it's a great image, and I think you're absolutely right. But he'd never show anyone.
Yeah, exactly. He would just keep it up,
and they'd be under his chair.
Under his chair. Is what I was going to say. That's his pride. Yeah. I love that scene after old Stringer dies, when James is sitting in that chair and he's just rubbing the armrests where his dad always used to rest.
Yeah.
That chair was very connected to you in that house.
Yeah, it was lovely, that, wasn't it? The way that happened, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk to us about the environment at that time? Did you have to do any research on what it would have been like for a laborer in Regency era?
Well, not really. I mean, I did.
For us over here, we don't know a lot.
No, I did a little bit of reading about it, but it's I mean, it's sort of the important thing to me that it predated the labor movement and the fact that nobody had any representation, and a right to reply,
Yeah, and I felt you walked a really good line there with your character. I felt that because a lot of the show is nonverbal, and there were frequently looks when you were on scene that you had on your face that just really displayed what it would have felt like to be a laborer, and you just kind of were put in that moment by the expression on your face.
Oh, that's kind. Thank you.
So I thought that was a neat kind of a twist on because usually in Regency shows they focus on Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth and the grand houses, but this show took it in a different direction, and they equally focused on both parts, and it was kind of the laborers really needed to be shown on. I thought that you did a really good job with all your. There was also like the ways that you would walk a little bit sometimes when you were holding the bricks, like you would just, because I assume they weren't making you carry real bricks.
There was a couple of real bricks.
Oh, really?
Okay. Well, you have to have a little bit of weight.
That's true. You can't just hoist it up above like this. Exactly.
But I'd say only 2 or 3 real bricks, and then the rest was polystyrene.
So Even that must have been hard to hold it up on your shoulder while you're going up a ladder. I was picturing like styrofoam.
Well, I mean, most of them were, as I say, most of them were. But there was a couple. We have to have a little bit of weight, otherwise
Yeah.
it's quite hard to, if you're not sort of Marcel Marceau or someone, it's quite hard not to. Yeah,
Good point.
push against the balloon, if you get my drift.
So, did you have a favorite space on the set?
I love the outdoor, the street.
Yeah.
I thought it was beautiful. The first time I saw that, it completely knocked me out. I mean, the art department on that show were absolutely second to none. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It's magic, I thought.
Even the details. Every time it's on, I try to read like the newspaper that's stuck to the walls,
Yeah,
but it always goes by too fast. That was so interesting to me. I didn't realize that it was set up that much as it was.
Yeah.
I didn't. Do you know what the purpose of the newspaper on the walls were?
I think just to give it a set. I mean, because some of it was posters, wasn't it, for attractions and things coming in, advertising the town as it would have been.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, advertise for people to come to the town. But, that would be the plan. I don't know. I think it just gave it a really. I think that that sort of script, that font that is used, just really anchors it in a time. Beautifully done, really.
And it's really telling about the town, how it's the state of repair that it's in, and the state of how they're working. Having that style set really tells exactly where they're at in the town. I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah.
So what about a favorite moment while filming? Do you have one of those?
I don't know. I think the moment after the accident was quite funny. We had quite a laugh with that.
When you were screaming?
Yeah, hamming it up like a good one. It was quite. Yeah, that was quite funny. It was nice. I mean, do you know what? The whole the cast and the crew was such a nice bunch of people. It was very. There was a lot of laughter. It was, and it's such nice people to be with, really. And Leo is such a nice lad. It's obviously I spent most of my time with him. So
yeah.
So yeah, that was.
I've seen a couple behind the scenes videos and photos, and there was always smiling on those. Of course, no one's going to put out behind the scene pictures where they're grumpy, but I assume that for the most part, that's true to form.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, very definitely. Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that scene after you hurt your leg? How many times did you have to do that scene?
When I'm on the floor?
Yeah.
Outside.
Like because there's an awful lot of you having to be really in pain and really screaming it out for a good, what felt like 7 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that.
Yeah. That I mean, that just was a lot of shouting, a lot of screaming, really. It's and then but you get to go, and then it's cut.
Yeah.
Then you can stop, and then they start up again, and it's no, it's I don't know. There's much to tell, really. It's just like cue the screaming. Okay, cut. You want me to scream again? Not yet.
just wait a little bit. You can scream later.
Yeah.
So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. The set, it looked really rustic and it looked really authentic. Yeah. And playing the part, how real did the set feel? Like when you were in there, could you really immerse yourself in that world?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it really did it felt brilliant. The fact that they're all flats, and the houses. Yeah, if you look at the big sort of Georgian house at the end, it's just a flat. It's just a flat. It's, nothing behind it.
I've seen one picture from that. I totally forgot that.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And then of course when you've got a horse and carriage going down the street, the middle of it, it's just fantastic. I mean, it really does. It really helps. It really helps you play the game.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So sadly and obviously, if there ever is a part 2, which we're all hoping for, you won't physically be there.
No.
Obviously, that's the thing. But I have to imagine that James is going to keep you pretty close to his chest. So you'll be there in spirit, if nothing else. Looking at James's ending in part 1, how he chose to stay on because he wanted to honor old Stringer.
Yeah.
Do you think that staying is the right course from a father to a son? Like, as his father, do you think it was the right choice to stay, or should he have gone?
It's difficult, isn't it, that one? Because, immediately I'm thinking, but he'd have been made a fool of, and
Mm-hmm.
he'd have been, his work would have been stolen, or
Oh, I
part of me
didn't even think
thinks,
about that aspect.
yeah, I mean, part of me thinks, that he should probably go, he should probably have gone,
Mm-hmm.
because actually the only thing that was holding him really there was me,
Yeah.
and sort of it's ironic that I die, and that's the one thing that keeps him there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he probably should. I think he probably should move on, or certainly make his way in a move up the class system if he can. Only
Yeah.
for his own finances, really.
Yes. So he didn't have to struggle under Tom's mismanagement of funds.
Really, yeah.
So if there was a part two, how would you want James's story to play out? Like, if you could imagine the exact story you'd want for your son James to have, what would it be?
Well, it would be great to see him as an architect in Sanditon, making a lot of money, and being treated and paid his worth.
Mm-hmm.
Being treated with respect and being paid what he's due.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting though. I don't know where he would be romantically. That's a hot potato, isn't it? Hey, that's a hot potato, that one. Which way is she gonna go?
That's the topic on everyone's. I've seen so many people say he needs to be with Allison Haywood, but that kind of, I don't know, that would feel like a weird transfer of affections.
Right.
I don't know you, but I'm going to love you because you're the one who I actually love, sister. That
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a good plan.
No, it doesn't work, that one.
No. So I have one more question before we get into kind of the projects you're in now. Are you, from not just James's point of view, but also Charlotte's, are you team Sidlot or are you team Stringlot?
Team Stringlot. Yeah, I'd have to be Team Stringlot, wouldn't I?
It would be kind of bastardizing if you didn't.
Yeah, it's my son we're talking about. Yeah, of course.
I've seen him say the same thing, so obviously. So, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now, or what you've got coming out or going on?
Yeah, I've got a thing called Anne coming out.
I saw something about that.
Which is about the Hillsborough. Are you aware of that?
No.
Do you know about the Hillsborough disaster?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it was 30 odd years ago. There was an important football match, soccer match.
Yeah.
And 96 people lost their lives.
Oh wow.
At the game, and it's been an ongoing court case for years and years and years. But it's there's a drama called it's a 3 or 4 parter. I'm not sure which way they've gone with it. That we recorded. I recorded that before Sanditon.
Oh.
Filmed that before Sanditon, but because there's been ongoing court cases, they've not been able to release it. But yeah, so that's called Anne, and that again is on ITV, which is where Sanditon was shown here.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will be out this year. We're just waiting to see, because obviously with all the COVID restrictions and everything, courts have been closed and one thing and another.
Yeah.
So that's coming out, and I'm just about to start filming a low budget British film called The Cost of Living.
Oh.
Which I'm not sure when that'll be out, but yeah, it's a great script, so I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about that one. I saw the Anne one on your IMDb profile, and that was.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That I think that's going to be great. I mean, it's a very upsetting story, and you're playing a real person in that.
Oh, I didn't think about that aspect.
Yeah, this guy lost his son at the game, and it's just a tragic life.
And that's a lot of responsibility on you as an actor to portray that authentically, and you have to do it compassionately too.
Well, of course, and it was again, it was one of those situations working on that where you've got a really lovely cast, and a really good crew and everyone, and then it sort of hits you the responsibility you've got, and how important what you're doing is, because you can't get something like that wrong, Yeah, so I'm really hoping that we'll see that soon, because it should be a lovely little drama, that. So
yeah.
Well,
those are all the questions that I have. I kind of wish I had more. It's been delightful talking with you.
Oh, it's lovely to meet you. And good luck with your Sanditon campaign.
Thank you. I'm one small obsessed fan of a part of a huge group of
I know there's a lot of you, and it's amazing that you're how tenacious you are, and terrific. And I hope you get what you're after. Not only that, because it'll mean a load of actors will be working as well, which is great.
Exactly. We are going to campaign for that as hard as we can. Maybe we could bring old Stringer back in some flashbacks.
Well, they did it in Dallas, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. If he can come back, anybody can come back. Well, thank you very much. I hope you get to feel a little bit better.
Thank you, Maureen. Lovely to meet you.
You too.
Take care.
Bye, Rob.
Bye-bye.
Now, wasn't that everything I told you it was going to be? I hope you guys get something really fun out of that. I hope you got a lot of information, a lot of insight out of that video. Feel free to leave us a comment in our email. That is in the description of every podcast we'll put out, every episode. Or you can reach out to us through our Facebook group, the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. And again, that's on Facebook. You can reach out to us there. We'd love to have you there. We do fun interactive games on there, and we give podcast updates on there. But we would like to know what you thought about the episode. We'd like to know what you thought about the interview, about Rob Jarvis, about the things that he had to say. And we know that you would love it as much as we have. So we really want to hear that love. And we want to be able to send that right back to Rob and let him know what you guys thought of the interview. And remember that we are still looking for fans to be interviewed for the show, for the podcast. So we want to know what you think about Sanditon. We want to know things that really made you think, things that you really felt were key points of the show. So if you want to be a guest on our podcast, please reach out to our email, the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Anything you have to say, we could always use your information and your ideas. Have a great week, and we will see you on Sunday.